topic, I think Anna introduced me in length. Just a quick brief is I work for JP Morgan Chase and I have been in banking for quite a long time. In my current capacity, I have been working with data analytics, data scientists, and data engineers, primarily from end-to-end delivery, where we start from the requirement gathering right from the stakeholder, developing and architecting the models, and then deploying it into the productions. Uh, Today, my topic is on generative AI in financial industry. At a brief, if I tell the crux of it, we will be discussing what is generative AI, what are some of the use cases I have delivered in banking. Before we actually build up the model, how can we make sure that the data and the model which we are using is responsible? Some of the ethical and the infrastructural considerations which we have, which we should keep it in mind, and some tools and resources which are available in order to build the AI responsibly. Before we actually start, let's start by understanding what is text. And when we start understanding text, either it is for writing content or maybe as a human, as a child when we start writing, or might be understanding text in order to build up the model. Either case, we can divide the whole process of understanding text into three major parts. The first part below is about lexical processing, where we divide or tokenize the whole text into small tokens and we try to understand each token separately. The best example of lexical processing can be spam and ham mails. When we have to recognize whether the mail is really spam or a ham, we actually go by the keywords which are present into the mail and we figure out whether it is really a spam or a ham. The next phase of it is about syntactic processing, which talks about the language or the grammar which is associated with the text. When we say language, we are actually talking about the part of speech, which means that we talk about whether a particular word in a sentence is either a noun or a pronoun, adjective or adverb, or might be we are more concerned about whether it's a subject, predicate, or object of the sentence. By joining the grammar and joining this and this language of the part of speech of those tokens together, we try to do the syntactic processing. And the third part of it is about semantic processing, which is talking mainly about when you are processing a text, it is not only the text which you are processing, but you need a lot of additional information in order to process it, which in the cloud it shows the general knowledge or the domain expertise, especially in the domain like healthcare and all, where the domain expertise plays a vital role, and also discourse context where the same word can have different meaning in different context. Just to explain the semantic processing by example, suppose I tell you a sentence, a cat is walking. As soon as I say the word cat, as a human, we all can visualize the cat and we understand what cat exactly is. And that what exactly semantic processing means when you are doing a conversation or when you are processing a text or a document into a model, it should be supplemented by extra text which actually explains it better, which is not mentioned in the text. Having said that, in the middle, the picture it shows about the text and the speech, is always from the shallow side, going from the shallow side of text speech to finally landing into syntax, semantics, and finally discourse. The whole text processing nowadays is being done by deep learning architecture. When I say deep learning architecture, I'm mainly talking about generative AI. And basically, what is generative AI? Basically, when you are talking about generative AI, you are using the already existing large language model which have been already been trained on large amount of data, and we can reuse it or repurpose it for our own purpose, right? And the technology, it is evolving every day. Some of the two new news which I have included in my slides are about Meta releasing Llama 3 and also Amazon Bedrock coming up with a new model. So technology will keep on evolving. While we are discussing about generative AI, let's start with a major milestone which started with OpenAI back in 2022. In fact, the whole generative AI get into focus when ChatGPT came into picture in 2022. Of course, this slide only present the milestone of the OpenAI, and soon later, many other organizations like Meta, Facebook, and others joined in, and they released their own models. We know generative AI when in 2022 when ChatGPT came into picture, but you can see the actual journey starts from when we had GAN models in 2014, and of course the transformer model, the deep learning models today. Most of the models, the generative AI models which are being used, are based on transformer, which are basically the encoder decoder architecture model, and that has been published in 2017 by a paper by Google, which is called Attention is All You Need. Soon after the transformer has been released in 2017, we had GPT-1, 2, 3, and finally ChatGPT and then GPT-4. Of course, this is a journey of the text, and we had similar journey now in pictures, videos, sound, and almost all kind of forms of data which we can assemble. Coming back to generative AI, when we are talking about generative AI, it is must using the large language models, which has already been pre-trained, and we are reutilizing it. Now, when we say reutilizing, it can be just by using effective prompt engineering, so that we can query and we can be effective with the existing model as is, or it can also be fine tuning the model, where we fine tune the model based on our own repository and then reutilize it. Specifically talking about banking, now suppose you are in a financial industry and you want to build up a chatbot, you can use a large language model which has already been trained on doing question answering, but then you have to fine tune it for your own financial industry data. Let's talk about some of the common use cases of the generative AI, and the best I can start it is with these pictures. This is the most simple example, and it always happens with me that whenever I do present a content, I don't get a corresponding picture in order to represent it. These pictures I have collected it from my son's HTML page, where he had developed a HTML in order to support the vegetable vendor. What he asked me was some icons of vegetable which he can put it on his HTML. I came up with some very boring icons, and to my surprise, when the next day I looked into, I saw some of the very interesting icons. And all he has done is to keep the effective prompt engineering in order to generate the icons for his own HTML page. The next use case I can talk about is about content generation. This use case, the picture I have, because of the proprietary reason, I'm not using my own, you know, own banking example, but explaining this picture, we have a lot of text, which is basically in form of videos, and in order to convert those videos and feed it into large language models so that it can be used effectively, what we do is we first generate the transcriptions of those videos, and then we feed those transcriptions into large language models. Once we feed that, the large language model, how does it really help? Is it gives a small summary of those videos, or maybe give a small header for that video, or it can come up with the key messages which is present in those video. It can also break your whole video into small chunks, so that each chunk can be studied in separate, or if you are using the chatbot for the question answering session, in order instead of bringing the whole video and loading it onto the chat answer, only the chunk which is relevant can be loaded. The next use case which I want to talk about is about language translation and the content localization. Of course, language translation is not new. In fact, the first transformer model which has been built was built in order to do the language translation. What I want to highlight is about content localization, basically translation to the local languages which are relevant. There are some stats at the top which reads out as 9 out of 10 users stated that they always visited a website in their own language. And therefore, it is very important for us, especially in financial industry, that when we are developing our applications, they are localized or they are converted into the language which are local. But what we understood from generative AI is it has been trained on large language models, which has been pre-trained, right? The problem with the localization is there are a limited amount of data, right? And therefore, it is not as simple as doing the language translation because you don't have relevant data in the local language. And there comes some of the tools which effectively help us in content localization. Finally, when we are developing such models in generative AI, there are some considerations around how to effectively make use of the data and the model which you are selecting. There are three aspects of it. One is the data itself. Second is about the feature engineering which we do, basically selecting the effective features which can help us in order to deploy the model. And lastly is the model itself. When we talk about the data, it is basically about data drift. The best example of it can be COVID. When and to say about when we are doing demand forecasting. If you are doing demand forecasting, especially in the time of COVID, and in COVID, right, we were developing models which were on the data which is pre-COVID and then post-COVID. That's the best example of data drift. Again, the bias data, the data might be biased. Suppose you have not considered the outliers or you have not made it sensitive enough to data, especially when you have not done a stratified sampling or you have not represented each category of your data, then data might not be biased. And therefore, in order to make sure that the model has been developed responsibly, we have to make sure that the data drift and the biasness of the data has been taken care when we are doing the data analysis. We do have a lot of data quality check which we do, data quality tools which do a mapping of the data across different sources in order to make sure that the data which we are using are free from these kind of issues. Second aspect of it is about the feature engineering. When we are doing feature engineering, what kind of features has been used, whether we are using ample amount of features which can represent all the aspects of what we want to be included into the model. Also, while if you have historical data and you are not referring to the current data, if you are restraining your model for a particular period of time and you are training your model back and back on the same amount of data. Also, if you have feedback loop, suppose you are making up a model on whether an employee should be selected for an particular position or not, and you're rejecting him again and again, and it goes in a feedback loop. If you're not considering the reason about why it has been rejected, then that particular resource will keep on getting rejected because the model has been trained only on the historical focus with the feedback loop. Also, the default value which we have provided should be done very effectively when we are doing the feature engineering. Talking about the model itself, overfitting is a case, and also the sensitivity, which is mainly when we are introducing some kind of bias or some kind of outlier, or specifically when the model is not very sensitive for handling any kind of diversions which can go in the algo, then the model will face issues. So other aspect of it is also about ethics. When we talk about ethics, there is always trade-off between transparency and explainability. The more you go on explaining your model, the more exposure you are giving, you are exposing your model. So there is always a trade-off between how you manage the transparency and the explainability. And similarly, the purpose and the authority of what data which you want to use in your model and the purpose of why you are using it, again there is a trade-off and we have to use it very effectively. The last point there is talking about fair, useful, and private. There are three different ways by which you can categorize your documents. These are not only the ways, but you can go as granular as talking about whether it's a restricted document or whether it's a confidential document, secret document, or top secret document. The whole crux is before you feed any of your document into any of the generative AI model, make sure they have been classified properly. And some few consideration before I wrap up. The first one is when the responsible AI and explainable AI. We always start talking with the principles of responsible AI and making the best use of it. But when it comes to explainability, it is mainly about the metrics, which is measuring the accuracy and effectiveness of the model rather than measuring the responsibility of it. In fact, in many of the cases, the keywords like safety, bias, ethics, transparency, and beneficial are not even defined. Therefore, it is very important that we define these keywords more effectively when we are developing models using generative AI. The second and third part of it is mainly to create awareness. When we are developing models using generative AI, we are involving a diverse set of people, which may not be data trained. For example, our business partner, our stakeholders, or might be in-stream or downstream people. They are not actually data, they are not exposed to the data, and therefore when you're developing something as important as gen AI projects, it is important that you train your core system ecosystems, at least bring the awareness, provide them the sandbox where they can practice or experiment with your tools. Also, there is a huge gap between business leaders and the data leaders. The keyword or the terminologies in which the business leader talk is not one-on-one correlation with how the data leaders talk. And therefore, it is important that we bring into place some low-code, no-code tools which can easily convert the business statements into effective data scrapping from the database without involving much of the technology there. And lastly, it is very important to plan the infrastructures properly, because you are talking about huge compute and it is involved with huge cost. So at least the awareness of how you are using it, monitoring your ecosystems, and seeing your budgets, and how you are governing it. It is very important that you know where the infrastructure is being used and how it has been utilized. With that, I come to the end of the session. Thank you so much for having me here, and please connect with me on LinkedIn so that we stay connected.